Hello, it me, WildRozen, what just appeared, and tonight, Mycorrhiza, at least I think that's how you'd say that, which is a game that calls itself a love letter to horror mangas like those done by Junji Ito, who's also inspired another game we did recently, which was cool as hell. So, here we go. Now this is a... oh, God. This is a demo, and I already know that only the first door, Act 1, Pets, is functional. So, the other doors are gonna open up as the game continues its development cycle. And I gotta make sure my face isn't in the way. Oh, my eyes were burning. It felt like hot coals were lying on my eyelids. I slowly opened them and attempted to heave myself up from the cold asphalt. But I failed. My whole body was heavy. My head felt like it was being squashed by a hydraulic press. After a few attempts, I finally succeeded and tried to make out where I was. The fog in my mind lifted slowly, and I realized that I was in a dark alleyway. My vision was still blurry, and I had trouble keeping my eyes open, but I could tell that I had never seen this place before. Slowly, my heart began to race. Was I abducted? Mugged? What had happened to me? I hastily checked my body, fortunately finding no wounds. Why was I feeling this weak then? Maybe I was drugged after all. As I tried to recall what might have happened to me, my eyes finally focused and I could see the house in front of me. In fact, it was the only house on the street with its lights on. A dirty yellow glow shone through every single visible window. I felt some relief knowing that tenants were awake. Perhaps they could tell me where I was. I wouldn't mind some warmth either. I approached the front door. It took me some searching to find the doorbell through the overgrown ivy. A deep gong rang out from within the house when I pressed it. The sound, amplified by the cold wind cutting through my shirt, made me tense up. What an odd choice for a doorbell sound, I thought while rubbing my upper arms to warm myself. I waited. No one answered. My mind twisted in confusion. Why was no one coming? I rang the doorbell again. Then I tried knocking. No response. No one was coming. I didn't understand. Did they forget to turn off the lights and go on vacation or something? As a last resort, I tried turning the doorknob and it actually opened? This worried me. Did something happen to the family living here? Perhaps I should find a phone and call the police. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the street. My heart started to pound as my body tensed up. I wanted to dash into the house, but my feet refused to move. What was that sound? Someone out there? Pictures of otherworldly monsters and armed kidnappers popped into my mind as my eyes scanned the darkness. The world was silent once more. I was still on edge, but my body slowly started to relax as I regained my composure. I decided I didn't want to find out what that was. That makes two of us. Cautiously, I stepped through the threshold and firmly closed the door behind me. I felt an immediate lurch of guilt since I was trespassing into a stranger's home, but I'd rather face a police questioning than wander around a strange neighborhood in the middle of the night. Hello? Is anyone there? No answer. The house was eerily quiet. I cautiously ventured further down the front hall. Perhaps I could find a telephone. I stopped in front of one of the doors. A dim yellow light seeped silently through the bottom crack. I turned the knob. Locked. Then the next one. Also locked. They all seemed to be. I frowned. Why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? It gave me an uneasy feeling. The door at the very end of the hall was the only one that I hadn't tried yet. I grasped its handle and turned it slowly. It swung open to complete darkness. Once again, my body tensed up while my mind started to conjure horrific images. A beast with dislocated limbs and crooked teeth creeping towards me from the darkness. A floor littered with corpses and walls stained with blood. A giant spider sitting in a corner, waiting for its chance to strike. My hands shook as I reached to flick on the light. It was an utterly ordinary bedroom. My heartbeat slowly calmed down as I realized it seemed to be safe. I almost felt silly getting scared of nothing. A quick search yielded nothing but barren, dusty shelves. The bed was the only meaningful object present. Slowly but surely, a wave of fatigue watched over me. The more I looked at the bed, the more tempting it became. With my adrenaline rush fading away, I found that I was more exhausted than I had realized. Like a worm working its way into an apple, a single thought slowly appeared in my mind. I had to sleep. That was soon the only thing I could think of as my consciousness faded. I had sleep. The world turned dark, and the soft covers of the bed pulled me deeper, deeper into the black abyss. Some people have gotten as little as a couple hours of sleep the last couple of nights. Yeah, same. Let's hope that this will all be over soon. Same. Ooh. I shot awake! It was as if no time had passed. I hardly remembered falling asleep. Feeling a bit better, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But I was more confident that I'd be able to find help now that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to try to retry the doors, just in case. They were still locked. I would have at least liked to take a shower. I smelled my clothes, and they had indeed started to smell slightly sour. It would have been nice to access the kitchen as well, although it was doubtful there was much food here given the house's empty state. The place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd be better off out in the street now that it was day, even if I was still missing my wallet. I left the house with the bright sunlight. The back street didn't seem to be so bad anymore. I found it to be rather cozy and quaint, in fact. I made my way down the path until I heard the faint sound of conversation in the distance. A weight lifted from my heart when I first glimpsed people walking around in a pedestrian area. There weren't too many of them, though, and as I looked around, I got the feeling that it was a rather small town. Trees and flowers were planted at regular intervals, which gave it more of a rural atmosphere. And it didn't matter. I could finally ask for help. "Excuse me, could you tell me where I am?" The woman blinked at my approach. She frowned and scowled in my general direction. "This is... oh my god, what word is it? Kejaminth!" Kejaminth. She looked uncomfortable talking to me, so I thanked her and let her be. Kejaminth. I had never heard of a town like that before. Where? How did I end up here? The thought of being somewhere I didn't recognize scared me. How was I supposed to get back home if I didn't even have the slightest idea where to go? I took a deep breath to calm myself down. The next best bet would be asking someone to allow me to make a phone call from a mobile phone. Hey, look on the bright side, buddy. At least you can understand the language and they can understand you. It could be worse. I approached an older man in a business suit. "Excuse me, may I use your phone? I'm a bit lost and would like to call a friend of mine so he can pick me up." His lips curled into a grimacing frown. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a hurry." I approached person after person, but after what felt like several hours, I had no luck. No one wanted to lend an unkempt, half-dressed stranger their phone. As I made my way through a side street, I heard two elderly women whispering to each other. "I heard of some violent incidents recently. Most got away with just a flesh wound, saying that they were attacked by someone or something." "Yeah, I heard that too. I wonder if it has anything to do with the pet disappearances. I heard of another cat that hadn't come back in several days." Oh! I was so focused on the conversation that I almost ran into a girl. I mumbled an apology until I realized she had approached me on purpose. "Hi." "Hi? You need to call someone, right?" She extended her hand and offered me her phone. "How did you know?" "People have been talking about you. We've had some violent crime here recently. Everyone was a little on edge. Many pets have been getting sick. Some say someone has been poisoning them." She nervously shuffled her feet and glanced away. "Thank you. I won't take long." I took the phone and dialed a friend's number, but the call didn't go through. I tried it again, but the result was the same. Maybe his phone was turned off? I tried my parents' house phone, then my job's front desk, and my boss's personal cell. Each time the call failed. I was sure that I had the right numbers. Maybe the phone had a bad connection? Seems like the calls won't connect for some reason. Maybe you'll have more luck trying a landline. My phone does act up sometimes. You might be right. Still, thank you a lot. I didn't want to hold her up any longer, so I gave her phone back and wandered off in a rushed farewell. Leaving that way may have been a bit rude, but I was too frustrated to care. I just wanted to look for another way to get in contact with someone I knew. It occurred to me that I should have asked her for directions to the police station. I turned to look for her, she had already vanished. As I made my way through town, I could now definitely feel the tension in the air. That girl was right. Everyone was on edge. While I was passing by an alleyway, something caught my eye. They were too big to be rats, and I really couldn't make out anything other than their eerie, glowing eyes. Speaking of which, what the hell is that in the background? Maybe it was a cat gang searching the trash for food. Apropos food, I was starving. But I couldn't possibly just ask random people to feed me, and since my wallet was missing, I didn't have any money on me to buy something. Though, there were oddly tempting plants growing nearby. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. Their strange appearance hypnotized me, and without me noticing, my feet inched closer. Closer. And closer. Hard pass, don't do that. I broke away from the hypnotic pull of the plants. What was I thinking? Oh, there's save slots. It didn't matter how hungry I was. They may be poisonous, but my hunger was beginning to gnaw at my insides. My vision grew blurry. Who knew how long it's been since I've eaten? Suddenly, I collapsed, and the world around me vanished. I heard that another team had some problems with a scientist of theirs who ended up being banned from their research center. She apparently performed experiments on humans who were redacted. I can almost sympathize with her. Only almost. Became spooky. It was dark when I awoke. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed from hunger. Something was shuffling by my ear. I felt the sniffing of an animal. Perhaps one of those cats I saw earlier? I couldn't bring myself to look. It lost interest and walked past me towards the plants. I heard more follow. As they padded into view, I noticed that something was off about them. It must have been my mind playing tricks on me. My hunger was overwhelming. Something about their bodies was wrong. They started to eat the plants. They were smacking rather loudly, and they made unnatural, fleshy sounds. Every now and then, one would pause and give off a low growl that didn't sound like a cat, or like a slightly higher-pitched bear growl. After a while, the sounds diminished, and I felt their presence vanish. I gathered my strength and forced myself to my feet. What had just happened? What were those creatures? The violent crimes that I heard about earlier popped into my mind. My hands began to shake slightly. What would have happened if I hadn't been paralyzed? If they had noticed that I was still alive? Most house lights were still lit. Mustn't have been out for long. Once again, my body gave up a deep growl. As if my stomach was eating itself. I had to get food, or else I was in danger of collapsing again. Being as desperate as I was, I approached the next best house and knocked. I was surprised when the door actually opened. Hi there, come on in. Nice of you to visit. Do we know each other? Before me stood a fashionably dressed woman with a big smile on her face. At first glance, she seemed welcoming, but her movements were rather stiff and almost mechanical, as if they had been practiced over and over again. She took another, more thorough look at me, and seemed to realize that we did, in fact, not know each other. Oh, you must be a new neighbor then. Please, come in. She disappeared before I could correct her, and I hesitantly followed her inside. On my way in, I saw a food bowl near the entrance with some of the strange-looking plants I had seen earlier in it. Huh. She'd been feeding those to her pet. I peeked after the woman into the living room. A man leapt to his feet as he saw me and stretched his big hand out to me. His other arm hung down limply. Apparently, he wasn't able to move it. Hi there. It's nice to meet you. How are you doing? I reciprocated his firm handshake, and he cheerfully gestured me to take a seat beside him. To my surprise, the girl who had helped me earlier was here as well. She gave me a small wave. Hey, she's cute! It's starting to feel like a festivity. We should have neighborhood get-togethers like these more often. Oh, right, this is... She turned and frowned in my direction while trying to remember a name she hadn't asked me for. Scott. I'm Scott. Right, Scott. He moved in nearby recently, I think. so I thought we should invite him in as well. Certainly, it's nice to meet you. Oh no, I'm not really. Oh right, food, give me a second. The woman rushed into the kitchen and came out with steaming dishes of food. I could make out different kinds of meat, baked potatoes, and more. My stomach gave up a deep growl, and my mouth began to water. Mine too, I'm actually really hungry. Any thought of honesty about my origin was gone. The other visitors started piling food onto their plates, and I followed suit. As I devoured it, and life came back to my body, I let my eyes wander over the others. Everyone seemed to be rather tense, especially the woman and the man. Their movements were rather stiff. Every now and then, they thrust glances each other's way. Glances that seemed to indicate mistrust. The woman seemed especially to be eyeing the cup of tea that the man was drinking out of. Every now and then, when they'd notice each other's looks, they'd put on a fake smile. The girl seemed like she hadn't planned to be here in the first place. Was she just dragged into it, just like I was? As I was cleaning my plate of scraps, something important flashed into my mind. Excuse me, would you mind if I used your phone? The woman tisked. I'm afraid I don't have one. I never cared for those buggers. She glanced over to the man. Maybe he can use yours? Of course, I can show you to my house once we're ready to go. I gave off a sigh of relief and thanked the man. He waved his hand in the air. No problem at all. Please, excuse me for one moment, though. He shuffled out of the room, presumably toward the bathroom. All right, I'll make some more tea. He scooped up the man's cup and left me alone with the girl. I cleared my throat and nodded in her direction. Hey, thank you again for lending me your phone. I really did appreciate that. You're welcome. I hope you'll have more luck with the landline. Yeah, I hope so too. And I guess that was the end of the conversation. Perhaps she felt uncomfortable speaking to a weird-smelling stranger. I'm gonna go wash my dishes. And there she went. The other two were taking quite a while. I used the opportunity to let my eyes wander around the room. The walls were dressed with paintings of all kinds. Pictures of nature, as well as more abstract, that's one way to put it, drawings. A fancy-looking framed piece of paper and a photograph that was standing on the drawer beneath them caught my eye. The former seemed to be an art degree, and the latter a picture of a man and the woman when they were younger. They were standing somewhere that could be a university campus. Both had a genuine smile on their face. It seemed like their friendship went back quite a bit. Hey! Whoa! Did she sneak behind me? I thought I had a clear view of the kitchen entrance. I think I heard some rumbling coming from downstairs. It would probably be best if you'd check on it in case she's hurt herself. She was likely referring to the woman who had invited me in. You did? She's been gone for quite a while now. Maybe something did happen to her. Perhaps I should take a look. I felt her eyes follow me to the basement. I squinted down the stairs. It was almost pitch black. I followed back my nerves and carefully crept down the steps. Maybe I should have called out to the woman, but something told me not to. I managed to reach the bottom stair and peeked around the corner. There I saw the woman kneeling by lamplight in front of a large cage. A basket of the strange plants sat beside her. There. It's all right. Take a good sniff of the cup. We need to hurry, okay? I know that he's growing one too. Everyone is. Everyone wants to get rid of the competition. We need to hurry. She held the man's cup to the bars. Something in her voice disturbed me. Whatever was going on, I wanted no part of it. I returned to the living room as quietly as I could. Hey, there you are! You ready to go? Upon hearing the man's loud voice, I jumped a bit. What I had seen in the basement made me a bit anxious. I took a quick look around and saw that the girl was already gone. Sure. I'm ready. Oh, leaving already? Just made some more tea. I turned to see the woman standing at the living room entrance with a put-on smile. Sorry, dear. I'm just not young enough to stay out late like we used to. She put on a playful pout. Oh, you do wound me. Come by again. You know you're welcome any time. We bid our farewells and set out into the cold night. I was glad to leave. What I had seen was still nagging on my mind. The man might be in danger. I had to tell him. I hesitated. How was I supposed to tell him when I, myself, wasn't sure what I had seen? But I collected myself and went for it. To my surprise, he wasn't nearly as upset as the woman as I thought he would be. Upset at the woman, as I thought he would be. He actually seemed to be more upset at me. I think you should not have snooped around at someone else's house who invited you over. I was left perplexed. What just happened? Thought I was warning him, but instead I've been scolded like a child. His face relaxed, and he gave me his usual smile. Seemed slightly pained this time. I suppose there's been no harm done. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. Couldn't believe him. I noticed more and more vacant houses as we crept through the town. Some were boarded up. Doors had been left wide open. Why are there so many empty houses around here? These houses have been vacant for a while now. You need not worry. I was sure that I passed by here earlier, but I didn't notice any abandoned buildings back then. They couldn't have left so suddenly in just half a day. Could they? An uneasy feeling started to fester inside of me. Here we are! We stopped before a house that looked much like every other house in the town. He stepped inside. I hesitated at the entrance before trailing in behind him. Come on in. No need to be shy. You want something to drink? No, thanks. The man hesitantly grunted and led me down the hallway. I only wanted to use the phone and get out. All the weirdness of the day had me on edge. But what if I still couldn't reach anyone? Where would I go? I was balancing a fine line between hope and despair, and the phone call would probably be what toppled me in either direction. All right, here you are. The phone was one of those old-fashioned ones that had a cord attached to the receiver. At least it had buttons instead of a rotary dial. I picked up the receiver and tried a number. Am I doing something wrong? There's no dial tone. Huh? Let me see. He took the receiver from my hand and pressed a few buttons. Let out a disappointed sigh. Not again. Those damn rodents keep getting to my cables. I'll go take a look at it. Feel free to make yourself at home. In case you get thirsty. He fetched a small bottle of soda from the kitchen, gave it to me, and went to the basement. Seemed like I wouldn't be able to leave quite so soon. Once I held a drink in my hands, I did start to get thirsty. I took a sip and thought about what to do next. Alright. Let's see. So I might not play through, like, every route of this, just so that you guys, after watching, can, go back and try the other routes yourself. Unless I have enough requests, then I'll, sure, I'll go back through. I have no problem with that. This game is very nice so far. I like me some visual novels, even though my narration skills are not the best. I want to take a look around, though. Choices. Well, pictures this time. I took a look at the pictures hanging on the wall. There weren't too many, but he seemed to be pretty cheerful in all of them. Especially the ones with his dog. For some reason, I hadn't seen it around. Nothing else caught my eye. What else should I check out? The study. Entering the man's study was like it felt like I was crossing a line. After all, he had invited me into his home and was trying to help me. But my curiosity overwhelmed me. I wondered what that thing in the basement was. And I wondered what that thing in the woman's basement was. And maybe I could find answers here. I took a look at the table to see what he was working on. A flipped over picture frame and an open journal grabbed my attention. I decided to sneak a peek at the picture and was surprised to find a photograph of the woman and the man. They looked older than in the picture I'd seen at the woman's place, but they still seemed to be good friends in this one. It depicted them in a park as they were having a picnic. A canvas was set up nearby. Why was it lying around, face down? Perhaps he just hadn't had the time to hang it face up yet? I turned my attention to the journal. His writing was messy, but I would probably be able to decipher it with some effort. What should I do? Oh, read! Wait, take it. Yes. Normally I wouldn't steal, but this couldn't be farther from a normal situation. I had no idea when he'd come back and how much time I had to read it. As I picked up the book, something fell out of it. I was startled by the sound and froze. Slowly, I picked it up and curiously took a look at it. It was a small key, possibly for a mailbox or a drawer. While wondering about where the key could fit, I suddenly heard steps that were coming closer and closer. My heartbeat accelerated, and in a panic, I hastily put the key and the notebook into my pocket, while quickly exiting the room. All right, it's done! I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing he didn't catch me snooping around. Yeah, given he just scolded me for doing it at someone else's house. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. He took the bottle I had drunk from earlier and left through the hallway. I had an odd sense of déjà vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same that I had already tried on the girl's mobile phone. Once again, they failed to connect. That be? I was 100% certain that the numbers were correct. I tried all the numbers of friends, family, and even work colleagues I could think of, until finally... Yes? Hello? It was a woman's voice that I didn't recognize. I was certain that I had dialed the number of one of my work colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who that is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again! She hung up. Alright, something was definitely wrong here. Might be best to talk to the man and see if he could help me somehow. Maybe he had a clue as to how I could get back home. I crept down to the hall. He went this way, right? I began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran through my back. The sound was coming from the basement. The old floorboards squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of a weak light coming from down the stairs. I took them as gently as I could, held a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom, turned a corner. It was just like before. The man knelt before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, you have the scent now, don't you? We must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. He will find the secret much faster than the others. No, we can't have him making something like you too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped out from underneath me as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. The sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. The man was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. It had the features of a human, but I could also see some elements that were distinctly dog-like. Its mouth was way too big, and the inside of it was filled with seemingly random set of teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, were the enormous eyes staring right back at me. The man fumbled with the lock on the cage. My feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All the while, one thought was frantically running through my head. I had to get out. I had to get away from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realized that I had exited the town already and was now on a big grassy plain. Breathing heavily and with fear flooding my mind, I'd almost not realized how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet and my vision slowly darkened from exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back and see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and, to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, but it seemed like the man wanted to send it after me to kill me. Realizing that I was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't be real. There was no way to explain what I had seen, and every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing. But I had seen it with my own two eyes. I needed to rest, but stopping could have been risky. We'll take a break. I should really take a quick break to make sure that I wouldn't collapse along the way. Agreed, yeah. So I sat down for a bit and kept lookout for the monster. After catching my breath, I suddenly remembered the journal. Maybe this would be a good time to take another peek inside. Yes! A small peek wouldn't hurt. I might find some clue as to what that thing was. I opened it to the very beginning and began to read. Oh, I didn't even think about reading the journal. That's a good idea. Hell yeah. I picked the right option, I think. At least the right option as far as I'm concerned. I've discovered the cause of the disappearances of the pets. No one was stealing them or killing them. They just changed. I installed a GPS chip on my own dog and followed it around to see what was going on, just to discover it eating one of those odd-looking plants. I tried to stop it, but it growled at me. Never had I seen it act that way before. Nothing I could do but let it finish. I took one of those plants with me to study it. For just a day, I saw that my dog had changed. It was a bit bigger, and its hair was falling out in great quantities. It also started to bark at me, seemingly for no reason. I tried a bit of the plant myself, hoping to see why it was so drawn to it, but I found the taste nearly unbearable. I set the journal down. I thought I had just heard a sound. I jerked my head around to find the source. There was nothing. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it was time to keep moving. Continue reading? Yes. I woke the next day to a piercing pain in my right arm. At first I was horrified to find that it was entirely bent out of shape. Something inside me suppressed my fear. I calmly stood to fix it. First I thought about getting rid of it, but the pain had already subsided. I was able to flatten it by beating it with a hammer. I had lost all feeling in the limb by that point. What would people think if I went out with a bent arm? I began to look for my dog. The first thing I found were large animal footprints, much too large for its paw. The kitchen had been torn apart, and strange hair littered the whole house. Then I found it. Or at least, something that was once my dog. I could still see the resemblance, but most of its hair had fallen out and its jaw was dislocated. It began to growl as soon as it saw me. Shortly after, it jumped on me with no provocation. It was hard to keep off with just one hand, but its teeth had fallen out, making it nearly harmless. I managed to knock it out and lock it up in the basement. Now, I had definitely heard something. I felt real uneasy about this, but I didn't want to stop reading. I felt so close to figuring out something crucial. Oh! Yes. Continue read. A little more couldn't hurt. It could hurt a lot, but I couldn't see any sign of the monster anywhere. Should be fine. Alright, where was I? I froze up. There was definitely something near me. And it was close. Way too close. I could almost feel its ragged breathing on my skin. My heart was starting to race. My chest contracted to the point where I had difficulties breathing. I needed to rest, but stopping couldn't have been. Take a break. Read it. Continue reading. Nothing. Okay, continue reading. Continue reading. Yes, okay, no. It was way too risky. I should keep moving. Hell knows what that monster would do to me if it found me. I continued on at a slower pace this time and soon came to a small, but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. But as I left the gap, something fell from my pocket into the water. It was the man's journal. Too late to retrieve it. It was quickly being carried away. For a split second I considered going after it, but I decided against it. It was nothing but the scribbles of a madman anyway. I doubt it could have much more use for me. At least, that's what I hoped. I don't know if I agree with that one. But I needed to carry on. I needed to find a way back home. After walking for what felt like hours, I caught a glimpse of a town. It looked quite a bit bigger than the one I had just left. The concrete buildings looked like needles from the distance. I wasn't fully sure what I felt at that moment. Part of me was relieved about seeing some civilization and being able to look for help. Another part of me was still in shock over what I had just experienced, but I was too tired to try to make any sense of it. So I pushed myself onward, using the remaining strength I had left. Soon it's going to be over, but I naively kept mumbling to myself as I dragged myself closer towards the next nightmare. Oh. You found key 1. Oh, is that the end of the demo? Oh, does the key open one of the main menu? Oh my god. Holy shit, that game's cool. Oh, stretch. I've been sitting in the same position a long time. Hi, game director here. Oh, he probably has a manlier voice than that. Hi, game director here. Thank you for trying out Mycorrhiza's demo. This game has been in development for way longer than one would think, and I'm happy to finally be able to share it with you. Whether you're a horror manga nerd or have never read one, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you picked up on the dynamic audio implementation as well. As someone who's mainly been a composer and sound designer for visual novels, I made sure to use my expertise in that area to make this game's audio a bit more special. You might even notice a change in the title screen theme now that you've finished the first act. Wink, wink. If you'd like to help us make Mycorrhiza the best it can be, then please consider sharing your opinion on it with us. Click on the text to open a survey page in your browser. Okie dokie. With that open, I will do it later. And if you'd like to be kept up to date on the game's progress, see exclusive teasers, and chat with us about your favorite horror manga, then check out our Twitter, at MycorrhizaVN. And while we're on the topic of Twitters, if you're ever craving for some new horror manga to read, I can recommend checking out @HorrorMangaRec, a Twitter account full of recommendations. Now that the first door has finally been opened, I'll work hard to make sure that the second one will be opened as soon as possible. You can click on the names of the people in the credits that are marked in gray. Those are hyperlinks to their social media. You can also find them in the About section. I'm not going to yet. I actually might look through it later. But anyway. So this is cool. I like horror mangas. I haven't read too many though. I've read a couple of the Junji Itos, just a few others scattered about. This is really neat though. I hope my narration wasn't too jarring for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the story. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of this narrative. I'm gonna follow it, and as soon as I see that more has come out, or at least, you know, if I get notified about that at least, I'll play through more of it and we'll continue this Mycorrhiza. But anyway, I'm proud of you guys. You have a great night. Thanks for watching. Bye!